Okay. All right. So again, 2013 Capacity Building Webinar Series. Welcome to Finding Qualified Families. This is April Reardon, the Capacity Building Director here at Habitat for Humanity of Minnesota. We have been offering this Capacity Building Webinar Series on a monthly basis all year. Hosted by HFHMN. We are having the web conferences on the last Wednesday of each month. Starting at 11 a.m. and going until about 12:15. We like to build in a little extra cushion so we have plenty of time for questions. Our next webinar, though, due to some vacations and things, will not be on the last Wednesday. Instead, it will be on June 19th, and we will have Susan Thompson here, our Loan and Grant Program Director, answering some questions about our loan program and about Federal Home Loan Bank and CRV funding. And so there'll be some good information to share there. And looking ahead to July, we will circle back and cover ABWK again. Really, we're offering these networking phone calls, these webinars in lieu of lots of different networking phone calls that we were managing. I'm trying to streamline into one web conferencing series. We may branch off and focus in a little bit, but just trying to see how this works. So it's not necessarily a formal training. This is really should be a great opportunity for staff, volunteers, VISTAs, other leaders from affiliates throughout the state to gather for conversation, for networking, sharing ideas and problem solving. We're so spread out all over the state and we can't always get together face to face, but trying to use some technology to help you stay connected to each other and stay connected to us so that we can hear from you about what's going on. So if you, this is most useful if you are willing to share your own expertise, ask questions, and use this as a chance to interact with your peers as well. And so we should figure out a little bit about how to do that. So how to participate. You should see a control panel that looks somewhat like this. It won't have the TCANS webinar or that ID, but it should look somewhat like this. Looking for okay. So you can hide and show your control panel for your audio mode. So for me, right now, I am using a microphone, a headset that's plugged into the computer. That way I don't have to accumulate any long distance charges or be on the phone. Especially for a presenter, it has a better audio quality and things. So you can get microphones that hook up to your computer for $15 or so. And I know we've talked here too about sending some to our affiliates. But some of the ways that you can participate would be to raise your hand. And that's, you see this little hand icon here, and you can click that to raise your hand. We're a small enough group today that if you raise your hand, I can unmute you and you can just talk to us. Down here in the question panel, you can enter a question. It only goes to me, but if we ask for comments at some point, then I can always just copy and paste that in so that everybody can see it, or I might read it aloud. Or if it's just something between us, that's fine, and I can just leave it there and I can respond to you in that question panel. And then another way to participate today would be through our polls. So I am going to launch the first poll. One thing that I know sometimes happens with webinars, and what's great is that we can just listen through the computer using this service. And so we're wondering how many people are participating with you right now. Is it just you at your computer, or do you have a couple of people gathered around a computer? Sometimes multiple people from one affiliate will sign up for the webinar, and then but then they'll participate together. So this helps us keep a good track of how many people attended. Okay, 100% voted. I'll share those results. So we've got a couple people with, a third of us are participating with a couple people, and then some are participating solo. So that's good to know. Thanks for sharing that with us. So using those things, if you have further questions or if you want to raise your hand, you can type questions in about the logistics, but I'm just going to move on from there. You'll see at the bottom of each slide then too that you will receive a link to these slides and any other resources that come up via email after the web conference. So we can dive in. Our goals for today, in our description, we really just wanted you to provide an opportunity for you to have a conversation focused on really finding and recruiting qualified partner families. We are hearing that for both new home construction projects and for owner occupied repairs that particularly in our greater Minnesota locations, that there are some barriers to finding families, and to be able to identify and talk with each other about what are some of those barriers to finding qualified families in your service area. Hopefully share some promising solutions. I did some digging and have a few things here to share with you. And also thought I'd use this opportunity to share with you our plans for a year-long Habitat for Humanity of Minnesota Vista that will be focused on family services and helping you tackle some of those barriers and come up with more solutions. So I'm going to try something here just to, as we move into introductions, and just say, if you happen to have the ability to see that, well, I'm April Reardon, again, the Capacity Building Director here at Habitat Minnesota, and I'm not sure if you all can see me or not, but I am trying to share my webcam with you so you can actually see me here in my office. Oh, it's telling me I have a slow connection if I do that, so maybe I'll stop. There it is. Okay. Well, anyway, that was me. And here we go. I'm trying to stop sharing my webcam because it's telling me I'm having some trouble with my internet connection otherwise. Okay. So what we want to do though too is find out who is here with us today. So either using the chat panel or the question panel where you could just write this in as a comment, like if you're not on the phone or if you're not using a microphone and speakers and you just can type, if you could just tell us your name, your affiliate, what role you have there, and then looking at this process, the homeownership process, where is it that you're running into those barriers, or where is it that you would like help? And it might be, it's good for Habitat Minnesota to know that so that we can focus some attention on getting you that assistance, but also so others can hear what the issues are that you're having and see if we have some shared issues that other people on the call might even have ideas for helping you out with that. So we can also unmute folks if you're able to do that. So if you want to be unmuted, feel free to raise your hand. And we've got a comment from Larry. So we have Larry, is it Beam or Beam from Habitat for Humanity of Green Bay. Has not shared yet what his role or what he would like help with. Just looking at this, is it that people in your community are not aware of Habitat yet? Is it in the first phone call or the first contact in the application process? Let's see. Maybe I'll try a different tactic. I'll just go ahead and, okay, here we go. We've got Angie Thaxton, Central Minnesota. She's our Family Services Director. I can go ahead and unmute everybody. And then you can also just remute yourself if you'd like. If anybody wants to share, introduce themselves. All right. Kathy or Laura, Megan, Sandy, anybody want to tell us about who you are, the affiliate you represent? Oh, we've got Kathy here. So it's Kathy and Chris in Morrison County and wanting help with number 2, looking at that application process. And Megan, Crow River, Executive Director. And she says, please don't unmute me. LOL. We heard her. Adorable, not obnoxious children in the background. All right, so help in that application process. I have another way of asking this. So I think I have another poll here. So I'll just launch this as a poll if people are not wanting to jump in and just talk about what you would like help with. Here's a poll to say, at what point does your affiliate run into barriers for finding qualified families? So we know that Kathy said in that application part, and Angie is saying that the biggest issues are the amount of debt they see applicants coming in with. So some of that probably falls into that selection criteria area, but they are also having a hard time finding families in our outlying areas. So Larry, the family services coordinator at Green Bay, thanks for clarifying the role. But Larry says he's getting enough applicants, identifying the correct media contacts and organizations to get the word out effectively about application meetings. So kind of that awareness piece maybe. And Laura and Melissa from North Central Iowa, finding families without too much debt. So similar to Angie there, and thinking about probably in that criteria. Okay, so we're looking at awareness, selection criteria, and the application process are the 3 that are coming up most in the poll. Looks like maybe one person hasn't voted yet, but just so you can see where that falls. But the selection criteria sounds like, I mean, even if we have Laura and Melissa and also Angie with our kind of a smaller group here, if they're all talking about that debt issue, then that can be a place it's good for us to know and be able to look at that and be able to focus some of our attention there. Would anybody like to jump in and talk a little bit more about those issues or talk in more detail about that? Maybe about Angie, about the outlying areas, or just want to give you the opportunity to jump in and say more if you'd like. Okay. Well, in looking at, you know, finding out how aware are families of your of the service that is provided and of Habitat for Humanity, of the philosophy, uh, looks like the first contact, I mean, we've heard from uh, affiliates where, if they could run into a problem when they're really digging into it, that it's more about um, the families who are coming to them are having a bad experience with the first person they come into contact with, or things like that. Kathy did just add that we find everyone has a housing need and a willingness to partner, but the ability to pay knocks them out of the process. So looking again at that criteria, the willingness to partner, they have the housing need, but that ability to pay. What I'm hearing from affiliates too is a combination of families in our service area either don't make enough money, or we don't have anybody who can afford a Habitat house, or the families in our community who could pay make too much money and they don't meet our criteria, and so that there's some issue with that formula there then too. Okay. So just to get us thinking about some of the things that HFHI would say should be in place. For this is a sample family selection checklist from that affiliate operations manual for family selection. And so, um, just to look through this list and think, how many of these things do you have in place? And then that might trigger some conversation amongst us to think, what are some of the solutions to those barriers? Or are there things on here that could be put into place that might help, or things in here that we could focus some resources to strengthen or provide training about that might help in overcoming some of those barriers? I have another comment from Kathy, though, too, but about many applicants having bad or poor credit. So it seems like the too much debt and the credit issue is a really common issue that affiliates are running into. So looking at this list of 16 items, I do have another poll about, just to get a sense of, for those of us on the call, do you have, how many of these things do you already have in place? This is anonymous. Nobody sees your response, so it's okay, because the options are going to be all, we have all of these things in place. We have most of them in place. Some, just a few. And if you're, I know there are some people who are signed up for the webinar who this might not be applicable, but if they are not an affiliate. And I think if we start to see, this looks like most of us are saying most. What are the things that are missing? Are they critical, or are they just extra items? All right, 100% have voted. So 100%, everybody said they have most of those things in place. Is anybody willing to share something that they don't have in place, or on the flip side, on a more strength-based approach, the things that they find most helpful in finding qualified families? What are the things that are really important to your affiliate to have in place? I'll wait for people to type also. Okay, anybody? Sounds like lots of you, a lot of people have audio available, but so Megan says number 15, the community-wide marketing and outreach plan and materials is probably your weakest. I think for some affiliates, especially when you're, smaller, in our greater Minnesota and smaller affiliates, it's hard to have the staff capacity to really devote a lot of time to that marketing plan and materials. And Angie says we don't have the position descriptions. So over here, number 1, for a chairperson, or a specific one for application reviewer and home visitors. They have the same people do both, so they only have a description for a family selection volunteer. That makes sense. A lot of times, for what Megan said about number 15, about these community-wide marketing plan and materials, affiliates have applied for vistas to focus on some of those communications plans, and that's made a big impact for them. Looking for my highlight tools. Well, some of the things that, I'm thinking, a well-defined selection criteria. Sounds like if we're saying most of these things are in place, it's good to have that criteria there, so that you know who you're trying to recruit. we're going to talk a little bit more about, I think, the tracking system for applications. To be able to do that efficiently and keep applicants engaged in the process. Some of the things we hear are that it takes so long for people to get through. They might just give up on it. But also to find out kind of a tracking system for that marketing process. What are the things that work? What are the things that are actually bringing in qualified families to the process? Uh, Along with that, that clearly defined process can be particularly helpful. This can be a powerful tool to see what is the orientation process, both in person and perhaps what are the other tools online, by phone, by written materials that we can provide to make sure that potential families or potential homeowners understand the process, understand the criteria, so that we are getting the best quality applicants for the homes that we are building or for the repairs that we're prepared, the repair projects we're prepared to do. What I was also going to go to, so I can go here. So here should be seeing the family selection operations manual. And trying to go to my little menu of just go to the page wasn't popping up, but I wanted to show a little bit of this. So here's again another view of that sample family selection checklist and checkup. So those are the things that were on our slide. But then it goes into more detail about things to do this checkup on and some questions about that, about the committee. By looking at strengthening that committee, you can focus in on then who is good to recruit for this committee. Do you have a profile that you can share with us about who's best to recruit for your family selection committee members? Has anybody had a particular amount of success in finding a good place or good places to find good quality family selection committee members? What kind of skills they should have? I should add too that Larry in Green Bay mentioned that number 15 and 16 are their weakest. That their current application process has been adequate to get 4 or 5 approved applicants per year, and that matched their building goals, but that they've recently increased their builds to 8 this year and more next year, and need a more effective marketing and outreach program to get those additional needed families. Exactly. But to share ideas for who, and think about how do you strengthen your committee and make sure those people are in place. One of the questions that we're hearing then too is how often does your committee meet? And that's something that we surveyed about, and there was a really good kind of a mix of some folks, some affiliates who were having their family selection committees meet on a regular basis, whether or not they had applications to approve or not approve, and so that the family selection committee was also involved in continuing and looking at that outreach process and evaluating how are we doing, but that in other cases affiliates were having a hard time getting people to keep coming to the meeting if there weren't applications. So really defining what's the role of that committee, what are the jobs that they need, what is the skills that they need. Megan mentioned that having some financial people or mortgage lenders as a part of that family selection committee is helpful. Seems like somebody who can understand and be able to look at some of the documents and help to determine that ability to pay. But perhaps, and maybe that's where a lot of affiliates have thought about the family selection committee, but maybe there is something, if we're looking at some of the weaknesses that people are identifying are in that marketing and outreach and communications area, it might be looking at who are some public relations or marketing or just people who um, know a lot of people in the community. So looking at the selection criteria, that was one that came up a lot for all of you as a barrier to finding qualified families. Does your selection criteria reflect your community? And have you, or when is the last time you did a community needs assessment? And that's a big chunk of what we want to have our Family Services Vista here at Habitat Minnesota next year help with is let's look at some of the data. Let's look at some of the incomes and the jobs and what the need is in your community and be able to hopefully provide some promising practices, partnerships, other solutions for that. But that application process, how efficient is it? Do you have the staff and volunteer capacity to keep your potential homeowners engaged? Are you following the recommended timeline? Are you able to get the credit reports, the home visits, this approval and denial process in a timely fashion, so that you're processing them and not losing people along the way? A couple more comments from Megan. Thanks, Megan. Just that their family selection committee meets when they have active open applications only, and that they have separate people who do home visits once the application has been approved. And then this application marketing and some of this awareness piece, to really think about, are families that meet your criteria aware of your program? And do you have a plan in place for reaching them? So I'll keep looking for comments here. It looks like people aren't interested in talking, which makes it a little hard here. Okay, so outreach plan and strategies. One of the things that we wanted to think about was that plan and also some of that information tracking as a way of thinking about what is working for me. So in this top box here, if you see it says a number of applicants. So if we break it down by quarter, and this is just a made up numbers, just for the sake of this exercise. But to look at, let's say we were doing church presentations, monthly information sessions, newspaper ads, just through our website, social media, and then in hopes that summer is really actually going to come. The sun is shining here in Minneapolis today, but I threw in parades. Obviously, there's lots of other strategies and other more effective strategies that one might use, but and this doesn't say how many church presentations you did or how many monthly information sessions. It's just for the sake of the exercise to think that. So from quarter one, let's just take the first row. In quarter one, and let's say this is the fiscal calendar, so in July, August, and September, from our church presentations, we got 4 applicants. In quarter two, we did church presentations and we got 10 applicants. In quarter three, 3, and quarter four, 8. So overall, for a whole year, our church presentations got us a total of 25 applications. Now, in order to have that data, you would have to ask, when somebody applies, where did that come from, or keep track of the applications that, someone from your church contact happens to turn over to you, or referrals or things like that. So you have to be able to track those things. And so you do that for all of those different strategies. But then in the second box, to look at the number of qualified applicants. So maybe you've got 4 applications from church presentations in quarter one. Only 3 of those were actually qualified. Maybe some of the other one didn't meet the criteria, had some of those issues that we were talking about before about bad credit or too much debt and that sort of thing. So not meeting some of that criteria. So then overall for the course of the year, 15 of the 25 applications you got from your church presentations garnered a qualified applicant. I mean, I think for many of you that would be a great scenario to have 15 of 25. But what would you learn from that? What might you look at? What are some of the questions or what's some of the information that you could get from that data? You can talk or chat a response. Free to type or most of you are unmuted unless you've muted yourselves. So you can just feel free to just go ahead and talk if you'd like. So Megan is saying that it looks like the church presentations and her website are key. So looking at that, looking at that total amount that you got 20 applicants and 25, so 45 applications from those two strategies. And that 15 of 20 from the website ended up being qualified, 15 of 25. So we could start to do some math and think, what's our return on that investment? Like what percentage of those do we get? I guess I would look at it too and think, who did the presentations in quarter 2? You know, if we had 6 of 10 or one of 3 here, 5 of 8. Is our percentage pretty consistent, or does that change depending on who does the presentation? Did we have a Vista come and work on our presentation, and did it become more clear as we were doing that presentation, or did we change something about it to make people more inclined to complete the application? What was it about our website? Have we changed anything about that? You know, and looking at parades, I tried to make that a little bit realistic, that there probably weren't a lot of parades in the winter time, but you know, if you're getting 12 applicants and only 5 are qualified, thinking about the amount of time spent on each one of these strategies might be interesting too. Like I said, we didn't say how many church presentations did we have to do, and was it staff doing it, or is that something that you were able to use volunteers to help expand your capacity to be able to do this? These church presentations, monthly information sessions, and parades would be some really time-consuming strategies. But if they're worthwhile and they get you the applicants that you need, then that's great. Whereas maybe a newspaper ad, especially if you can get it for free, or investing, you know, spending, the website would require some expertise and some expense up front, perhaps. Social media, the cost is mainly the time to do that, but you know, looking at how much are you really getting on it. So if you're spending too much time in social media and you're not getting the applicants you need, or that's not the place to reach your homeowners, and maybe that's a better place for engaging with funders, you can start to tweak your plan and look at that. And this might be the kind of data that your board or your committee would want to be looking at. So if they're thinking about, if we don't have applications to review, perhaps there's other kinds of data or other things that we can be looking at in order to make that recruitment process more efficient. You know, so you should really have an outreach plan in place and think about kind of like what Larry was saying, that we know how many homes, most of you with the strategic plan or your board will decide how many homes are we building this year, or how many repair projects are we hoping to complete this year, so you know how many families you need. Does that mean you've only try to recruit or get applications for that? You know, if you're building 8, you only want 8 applications? Probably not. You can start to track and think, of the number of applications we get, you know, in order to get the number of qualified families that we need, you know, maybe it's this where we have to get more than double, or just a little, like we need to double the number. So in order to get 8 qualified families, we need to get at least 16 applications. And it's probably even more than that to get people through. So anyway, it's important to think about how much time goes into it, what's the return on investment there. If you're trying a new strategy, to really keep track and see, is this really working for me? In the mentoring world, we would, in my previous job, it's a lot like mentor recruitment and thinking about what are the strategies that are really going to work in order to recruit new mentors. And, mentoring programs would spend a lot of time in parades or recruitment fairs or volunteer fairs, and they wouldn't actually convert a lot of those conversations and a lot of that time into actual qualified, committed mentors. What really did it best was just word of mouth and having their current mentors have a good experience and spread that word. And so it'd be interesting to see how that translates into Habitat. But Sandy just shared, she said she feels our weak areas are results from the parade in the newspaper. Yep. And that's actually, you're a little ahead of me here. I had to do a poll, but and Megan just added too that even in Habitat, I think the face-to-face opportunities are key because there's a familiar face to discuss those questions. So thinking about how do you build in more of those church presentations, those information sessions, and opportunities for potential homeowners to actually be able to ask their questions. That sounds good. So if you had to choose those 3 strategies for outreach based on this data, what would you stop doing? We know that Sandy said she would probably stop doing parades and maybe stop doing the newspaper. Anybody else want to jump in? I know Megan said she would keep doing the church and the website, the church presentations and the website. It's okay to say it depends too. It might depend on how much do those newspaper ads cost. Maybe if it's a low impact, low labor thing, you could do that. Oh, there's a hand raised. And Sandy, you have your hand up, but you are also unmuted, so you could certainly just talk if you'd like. Okay. But it's a good way to think about being really strategic about what's our outreach plan, what are the strategies that we are going to employ in order to get the number of families that we need. Right. And to decide what's our philosophy. Do we want to get as many applicants as possible, and we don't, we're okay, we want to get the word out and try to pull in as many people as we can, because we feel like maybe we can get them ready, or maybe they're not ready right now, or they don't qualify now, but we want them to be aware of the process? Or is it that you really want to do a lot of work up front through those presentations and through the information on your website and social media to kind of pre-screen, so that before they actually complete the application that then you have to review and process with your committee? Is it that you want to make sure that you're getting fewer applicants but more qualified ones? And I think there's a couple different camps and a couple different philosophies for that. And so it's interesting, I'm not saying you have to go one way or the other, but it would be interesting to see what works for different affiliates. We did have Megan chime in too that she would stop doing the newspaper ads, and then and Sandy, we're moving into strategies. So Sandy shared that they take advantage of presenting in home buyer workshops, and so that's actually where we are moving next, into some promising strategies. Okay. So let me just tell you a little bit about what's on this slide. So down here in the orange is a link, and it is from My Habitat. And so when you get the slides, after the webinar, you can actually click through and you could just click directly on here. If you haven't already listened to this audio recording, it's something that HFHI offered and had a couple panelists from affiliates, one in Los Angeles, and I can't remember where the other person was from, but really focused on successfully finding qualified families in today's economy. And one of the panelists would talk a little bit about having that plan, and really being strategic about where you're spending your time and some of those pieces. But then the affiliates were talking about some of the promising strategies and things that they were doing. So one of those that I learned about, and which sounds a lot like what Sandy just mentioned here, was a housing fair. And so the Los Angeles affiliate, and this of course is on a totally different scale than maybe what we would be doing in greater Minnesota, um, but partnered with some other housing organizations to have a housing fair, did a lot of marketing in targeted areas. But what's interesting, if you listen to the audio recording, is to think about all the things that they did that were so customer driven, or their home buyer centered, and looking at, we need it to be in a location that's close to our service area, or places where people would want to be living. We need to get the word out to employers and agencies who are serving families who meet our criteria, who might qualify for our homes. And they also spent the time to, in their marketing of the event, to list the income documents that people would need, so that if they learned about it and wanted to apply, they could apply on the spot. And then they had those mortgage lenders or financial folks on deck, and they're ready to process applications. So they were able to sort of qualify people on the spot and get them in the process. Other key things about that, I think, were that they set goals. They had a targeted goal for how many people they wanted to attend, and how many applications they were hoping to get from the housing fair. Their goal was to get 500 people to come, and they actually got 750. But she was very quick to mention in the audio recording too that you can scale this to your own service area, and to think your goal might be, our goal is to get 25 people to come, and we want to get 5 applications from that. And to think about what's appropriate for your area. But some of those housing fairs, along with that, some of these other promising strategies are, they used that community data and did a lot of these things in order to get people to attend this housing fair. So these are things you could do on a standalone basis, of using your community data to find who are the people who are making salaries that would fall in the range of our criteria. So looking at some of whatever your criteria are, if you're looking at HUD guidelines, or looking at other community data, but then asking to put flyers in those utility bills for people, letting them know, if you build a green habitat home, how much you would save on your utility bill. And I've heard from a lot of affiliates that they've had some success with getting applications by partnering with those utilities and sending brochures or information, or advertising an information session in there. I've also heard about folks looking at targeting employers. So and this is one of the things that came up in the audio recording as well, from HFHI, with one of the affiliates, to using that community data, doing some of that research. I'd say, again, maybe they'd done a community needs assessment years ago when they formed their affiliate, but needed to go back and look at that again, especially in a new economy and with things that were changing. But really honing in on, who are the employers, who are the key employers in our community who are employing the families, or the potential homeowners who meet our criteria, and doing presentations there. Some have had success in getting something in the paycheck, in the payroll, like in that envelope, to talk about habitat, and thinking about how to use some of that. So again, along with that, those partnerships with employers, but then also other agencies, other in your community who might also be reaching that same population. this homeowner dedication piece. Another idea was, much like I talked about mentors and that word of mouth and that face to face thing, but using homeowner dedications as a way to promote uh, promote your process and try to attract more and more applicants. And sometimes we're using it more to celebrate volunteers and funders, but it could also be a way to get the word out about applying and recruiting more families. Having the In the audio recording, they talked about having a relationship with a radio station. And so whenever they were having a homeowner dedication, the radio station would broadcast the dedication, maybe do an interview with the homeowner, talk about the process. It was sort of good radio for the station and for them because it was really moving and powerful, and they could talk to volunteers and funders, but then also the homeowner. But that um, the affiliate found that then, um, along with that, to share, and here's how you can apply, or here's who you can contact, or here's where you can find information about the criteria or about how to apply for a home, that was successful for them too. But I would think with newspaper articles, or if you're in a larger community TV spots, or things like that. But anything that features homeowners talking about the process and how it worked, and getting the word out along with those stories about the criteria or where to go to find out how to apply. And then with that, one of the things I found as clicking around to different websites and things was having your criteria and the process for applying for home ownership clearly outlined and easy to find. Um, and let's see, I was going to show you an example online, and we happen to have Angie here. So Angie from Central Minnesota is on here, but I hope it's okay that I'm sharing your website as a good example. But you could say go to cmhfh.org easily on the radio, or to say Central Minnesota Habitat for Humanity.org, and tell somebody to click on home ownership, and then they could go here and really be able to see really clearly outlined some of these things about how to apply, having how to apply, stories from families, the contact form in order to get the application, some FAQs, other community resources. Uh, it's all very clear and neatly outlined, and a way to find that. So to think about on your own website and your own in the phone book, in um, anything that you're posting on community boards or things like that. Is it clear how to get that information? Is it clear what the process is? And so I just thought this was a really good example that makes it really clear and easy to find that information. Let's see if I stop quick to see if I have any questions. So Laura was asking, where would we find information on who is making enough to qualify? And so there's a lot of information that is available, and we can send some of that, some of just the population data, census data, but then you can look at there's county and state data are looking at average wages, or trying to dig in and do some of that work. And when I get to the next slide, when we're talking about our Habitat for Humanity of Minnesota, our Family Services Vista, that's some of the work that we're going to have our Vista doing, is really making it easier for you to find the places where you can find that information. So, probably for the first round, we'll be gathering a lot of information ourselves, but also wanting it to be a tool that then affiliates can use on an ongoing basis to continue to identify partnerships, to be able to find the data that they need so that they can make good strategic decisions about family selection, about strategic planning um, for finding families. So I will, in the follow-up email, try to include some of those links for you. And so we heard a lot of people early on when we were asking what are some of those barriers to finding qualified families, that it was credit and debt and other issues. It was the ability to pay and also meeting the criteria that were getting in the way. And so again, in this audio recording, one of the things that the phrases that kept coming up was that not now does not mean not ever. And so more and more programs, granted this takes some work and it takes some capacity. You have to be able, if you're going to take it on in-house and do it within your affiliate, this is a whole other range of services that you're providing. But to provide, either provide or partner with an existing organization in your community, if it's there, to provide maybe some of those applicants who are sort of on the cusp. How can we get those people who are just on the cusp of being eligible to get there? Maybe they spend a year to work on some financial literacy classes. What if they do credit repair programs? You know, that will help them with their budgeting, help them reduce some of their debt, increase savings, or just be able to pay their bills better and improve that credit. I know I don't want to put you on the spot, Angie, but Central Minnesota has been looking at that or looking at playing with that. I don't know. Does anybody else on the call in other states or here in Minnesota thinking about that or partnering with other programs? Feel free to type or talk. I'll show you this almost home. This is the greater Fox Cities area, and it doesn't provide a ton of information about what they actually do, but the sort of this idea of having a partnership, and they're partnering with Goodwill Industries, but this is in Wisconsin, so maybe I'm not sure how close the Fox Cities area is to Green Bay, but it becomes kind of a case management and helping families qualify. But it could also fall, in this case, it falls into where it's sort of helping starting families to qualify, but also providing support to current homeowners if they're having trouble paying the bills or doing those, or just with those financial issues. So again, it might be helping with employment, improving credit, budgeting and planning and saving. But this was just an example to show a website of another affiliate of folks that are doing that. But there's quite a few affiliates who are starting to look at that. Anybody else looking at that, or do you partner with anybody if you have families who are qualified or who didn't qualify and want to try to get them there? I've also heard about affiliates who have those partnerships with other agencies, and so they'll refer maybe at Section 8 housing, and they have somebody who applies, but they don't meet their criteria, but if they're familiar and aware of Habitat's criteria, they can also refer families between them, back and forth. Other promising strategies that folks want to share that you've been doing in your own affiliate? Things that have been working? Some of these I asked. I have a monthly call with other capacity building folks and other state support organizations, and those are some of the things that they shared as well. But in Oregon, they have a community development core and working on partnering for financial literacy and homeowner education. But that was where they said they'd had a lot of success just making sure the agencies in their area were up to date with the mission and details. And that one of the things that they talked about too was that there was this assumption that people know what Habitat is about or they know what that is, but um, actually taking the time to really make sure that they met with those agencies, had relationships with those people, and that they really knew the details of how to qualify for Habitat Home really increased the number of referrals they got from those organizations, from people who were already working with those other organizations on repairing their credit. There was also from Iowa. Yes, I just don't have this one. This is sort of in that partnerships area as well, but they work with their housing authority, and the housing authority will mail info on their behalf to anyone they know who is paying $400 or $500 per month for their housing. So it might be if they're paying $400 or $500 for rent and they're doing that successfully, then they will send information about Habitat to those families on their behalf. All right, we have some ideas from our participants. So Megan says that they have some agencies in their office building that refer families to us. That's great. And she also added that she thinks a lot of times they miss good qualified applicants because they don't think, I think I'm assuming because the applicants don't think they would meet the criteria without even knowing what that criteria is. It seems like, and Megan, you also said that there was that communications gap or that awareness gap, and so really getting the word out there about what that criteria is. Or sometimes we make it really hard, like call to get the criteria or call to find out more, instead of just posting this is the criteria or this is what you have to have in order to apply. Oh, this is a great idea. So Laura shares that they put flyers in a local daycare that many of the clients received assistance and the Head Start program and got several applications through those contacts. So again, yeah, looking at an employer or agencies or just using your community data to find out, you know, who is that target audience and where can we find them. That was part of that whole radio spot too, about and thinking about, you know, maybe if you're hanging things up on a community board, maybe that's not something that if that's not producing a lot of applicants, then maybe trying something different. And maybe you hear, oh, I heard about Habitat on the radio from that, you know, this homeowner, and to be able to continue to track all of that information. Another idea from Parker said that they collaborated with the area community action organization, who administers the energy assistance program. Yep, and arranged to send a partner family recruitment mailing to their EA clients for their energy assistance clients. Great, and I hope that, again, the really important part of all of these promising strategies is to really track them and see, okay, we're going to try this new thing. Did it work? Or did it work better than what we were doing before? Are we really getting what we expected out of that? Or to have a goal for this is what we're hoping we get from it, and what did we actually get? And especially for those that might be sort of low labor, you know, where you don't have to put a lot of energy into it, it's okay to try some of those. But when you start to have things that are really labor intensive, of like, wow, we're going to try this big event in order, you know, a housing fair, in order to try to increase the number of applicants, that's a little more risky. Parker also added that they've had some limited success in partnering with the area Head Start programs. So, you know, looks like that's an idea that still needs to be tested in different communities to see if that's a really successful approach. Well, this is just the beginning of continuing to hear from you. What are some of those issues, and where can we at Habitat Minnesota provide more assistance? So we hear you loud and clear that this is an issue, and we are trying to work strategically on our end then too, to sort of keep the conversation going, get you all connected to each other. But we also then applied for a Family Services Vista, a year-long Family Services Vista, who will start in August. And some of the pieces of that work plan then for our Family Services Vista would be to look at those community needs assessments, look at some of that data. What is the need in different parts of the state? You know, at least to test the theory of, if you're not getting applicants, does that mean there's no need? And to make sure that we know that that's not it. But also to provide a tool for affiliates to really assess their process and sort of what is it on that checklist, or what are some things that we could strengthen? Is it our committee? Is that where we need to focus our resources, and we actually just need to recruit more people and we need to get them more engaged in the awareness process? Is it that we need to think about applying for a communications vista to help us get the word out and help us come up with that outreach plan? Or maybe it's some of the things we want to learn from that then too are, who are some of the partners that folks can work with, and is everybody tapping into all the partnerships that they could possibly have, well, at the state level, maybe at a regional level, and just at that really local level, and to think about mapping that out so that we can provide, again, this tool and with turnover and with committee members, just to be able to look at, okay, so if I am in St. Cloud, let's look at who are some of the partners, or who are some of the agencies that I should definitely be working with. And some of that a lot of that we'll learn just from talking with you all and finding out what is working, what isn't working. It's definitely this best practices approach that Habitat Minnesota has, and we want to be able to look at, here's some promising practices or things that are working well for some affiliates, and be able to look at how do we test that out, and how do we kind of add those to the toolbox for other affiliates who maybe haven't done that yet, but really knowing that it's not necessarily a cookie cutter solution, that there's going to be different demographics, different economic situations in different communities. And so to see if you're having trouble finding qualified families, there's probably a wide variety of problems and then a wide variety of solutions for that, but trying to provide some capacity building tools to help you identify those and hopefully increase the number of promising practices that you can kind of choose from. The other part of that work plan too is to look at then homeowner education, both um, it, what are people already doing, what's already out there, is there anything that we can promote and centralize and have available for those of you who aren't doing that yet. And I say pre and post qualified because it can be homeowner education that helps get people qualified, helps them meet that criteria, but it can also fall over into that family support area of what are folks doing for families who are qualified, and helping them become ready to be those homeowners. And I just want to mention that we have our Family Services Vista, who has accepted our position, and he is actually on the webinar today. I don't know if you have audio, Aaron, or I can unmute you, but if you wanted to say hi. But we're excited to have Aaron and have him hit the ground running, and it says a lot that August is a couple months away, and he's already digging in and learning about what the issues are by hearing from all of you.
Hey guys.
All right. Other questions, comments, things that you want to make sure we know, or solutions that you can share with your peers about family selection, or ideas, or things that are working for you, or things that you're trying that might be promising practices? Again, you can type or talk. Or feedback on kind of our plans for our Family Services Vista. Anything else you'd like to see Aaron working on next year, in the next fiscal year? All right. Well, I will get through the last little bit here just so you know, but again, we mentioned that our next webinar in the capacity building webinar series is June 19th, so it's a week earlier in June just because of vacations and things, but really wanting to dig into the loan and grant programs from Habitat Minnesota. And so any questions you have about FHLB, CRV funding for both new home construction and new this year for owner-occupied repair projects. But Susan Thompson is really working on that, and again, it's a chance to talk to each other, for her to share some key information about those programs and anything new or updates or things that are important for all of you to know, but also just available to answer your questions. So you can send those to us ahead of time or just fire away live during that web conference. So hopefully, maybe we need to send the headsets out to get people available to talk. Just double checking to see if I have any comments or questions on my chat list. And again, delighted to have Erin on the webinar today. And again, if you download the slides, once you get those after the webinar, you can click on register today and you'll go ahead and be able to register for that web conference. Oh, Sandy, you've got your hand up again. Do you want to share something? You are unmuted if you'd like to. Oh, and she's good. Okay. All right. Well, it'd be great. We will send out a brief survey as you exit the web conference. If you do think having a headset provided for you would help, I'm not sure if you're on the phone or maybe you're all just listening through the computer and only have the chat function available to you because you didn't want to call in, which makes sense. If having a headset would be helpful for you, just mention that in the sort of open comments section of the survey. Something I've been playing around with the idea of just getting those and sending them out to affiliates to help you participate, but didn't want to do it too prematurely and not sure if people already had that or had other ways or preferred the phone or things like that. So if you would take a moment to do that, we're trying a new webinar service to try to keep the cost down for the audio and the phone piece, and it wasn't very intuitive to people to log into the webinar but still have to be on their phone. So this seems to be the preferred webinar service. But anyway, well, thank you so much for participating today. I wish I would have heard more voices, but that's okay. We had lots and lots of great comments and ideas in the chat panel, and we look forward to another year of really digging in with our Vista to provide some support and help you with this process of finding qualified families. Again, in the comment section for the survey, if you have specific questions or other angles or things that we want more information on, please share that. If we want to focus on finding families for ABWK projects, I didn't hear many questions or comments about that today, but we will respond to whatever it is that you request or that you're interested in. But if there are no other comments or questions, we can go ahead and wrap up now. So thank you again for joining us today.